looking at the highest railroad bridge in Europe. It's more than 1,600 feet long, its highest point is more than 600 feet over the river below, and it's located in the southeastern European country of Montenegro. It's a fascinating and scenic place to stage an airborne stunt that's never been done here before. This is the Czech Flying Bulls aerobatics team. They're precision stunt pilots. What they set out to do was perform the first ever inverted group loop around the bridge. Also known as an outside loop, an inverted one is like a forward flip. It involves flying upside down at the bottom part of the loop when you're normally right side up in a regular loop. It brings intense negative G-forces when the blood rushes toward your head instead of away from it, but somehow the pilots pulled it off and stayed in formation to make aviation history at a historic landmark. I'm Carl Azuz for The World from A to Z. Thank you for taking the time to watch this Wednesday. There's a new development in the war in Ukraine that reportedly involves troops from another country. The conflict started when Russia fully invaded Ukraine in February of 2022. Since then, both nations have made incremental gains here and there, but neither has been dominant, and it doesn't look like the war's about to end anytime soon. The United States and several European countries have supported Ukraine with funding, weapons, and equipment. Iran is suspected of sending weapons to Russia, and Belarus has allowed Russian forces to use its territory and airspace. But now, European and American officials say thousands of troops from North Korea have arrived in Russia, and that some are planning to fight or are doing so already against the Ukrainian military. The British Broadcasting Corporation reports that Russia and North Korea have formed an alliance since Russia attacked Ukraine. In exchange for its support, officials say Russia has sent North Korea military technology and other forms of assistance. When Russian President Vladimir Putin was asked about this last week, he didn't answer directly, saying, quote, "It's our business." European authorities call North Korea's apparent involvement a dangerous escalation in the war.
Word and knowledge. What is also known as the stress hormone: cortisol, dopamine, insulin, secretin. It's a natural steroid hormone, but if its levels stay too high, cortisol has been linked to everything from heart disease to forgetfulness to trouble sleeping.
The consequences of him ever being president again are brutally serious.
If Kamala gets 4 more years, she will obliterate our economy.
With messages like those, it can be easy to feel stressed.
And being exposed to so many news that are not always positive or happy or encouraging leads to more sense of distress.
There are ways to manage the anxiety. Mental health experts suggest limiting time exposed to stressful content, like doom scrolling on social media, and do things that are good for your mind, body, and spirit.
Engaging in activities, making sure that the discussions that we have with friends or family members are not necessarily around the topics that are currently stressful.
And if you find yourself frustrated by a friend, family member, or coworker with different political views, UCLA's Dr. Emmanuel Maidenberg says it's important to remember people are more than just their political beliefs.
Recognizing that opinions, including political opinions, are based in our personal life experiences. Thinking about it that way allows for some compassion to understand that the other person may have different view, a different interpretation of some of the things that happen.
In Washington, Brian Abel reporting.
Did you know voter turnout is the percentage of the voting age population that actually shows up to vote? The 2020 election saw the highest voter turnout in decades. To learn more, check out We the People and the President.
On this date in world history.
A
famous broadcast of October 30th, 1938 was designed to be fake news, a work of fiction, but it factually scared the daylights out of some American radio listeners. Actor Orson Welles put on a play by H.G. Wells called The War of the Worlds. It was about a Martian invasion and was presented like a newscast. And because so many members of the public thought it was real and terrifying, the U.S. government launched an investigation into the production. Officials determined that no laws were broken, but the War of the Worlds served as an eye-opening example about the power of radio communication. And near the end of World War I, the Ottoman Empire surrendered to the Allied powers on this date in 1918. The Armistice of Mudros was signed aboard a British battleship, and it demobilized the Ottoman army and surrendered strategic locations to the Allies. Fighting in the war itself formally stopped on November 11th of that year. Next topic, idioms. And you. It's not exactly letting the cat out of the bag to say it's plain as day there are no butterflies in my stomach when it comes to being on air. Those of you familiar with English idioms will probably just shrug that off. But for people learning English, they can create a lot of confusion, just like other languages' idioms can confuse us.
Do you ever think about the immortality of the crab? Specifically, pensando en la inmortalidad del cangrejo. If you have, it's because you've been daydreaming, because crabs are not, in fact, immortal. The Spanish expression means someone is off in la la land. Polish has a similar phrase, myśleć o niebieskich migdałach, which means you're thinking about blue almonds. There's no such thing. There's also no such thing as a fence made of sausage, which is a Hungarian expression. Nem kolbászból van a kerítés. It means something isn't as good as you think it is. If you ask a Persian about something they had nothing to do with, they'll say, Mana sare piatsam nata piats. I'm neither the top nor the bottom of the onion. In other words, I'm not useful in this situation. If a kid in Portugal or Brazil asks if they can have dessert for dinner, their mom might tell them, Tira o cavallino da chuva, which means take the little horse out of the rain. Huh? If a guest were staying at a friend's house for a long time, they would put the horse in the stable to protect it from the elements. That meant they were resigned to spending the night. Taking the little horse out of the rain is similar to the English saying, don't hold your breath. If a Ukrainian parent is upset with a child, that adult might say, Ja pokażę tobie de reki zimują, meaning, I'll show you where the crayfish are wintering. Russian shares a similar expression. Why exactly is that the thread of choice? Well, crayfish were considered a delicacy, and Russian lords loved them. But catching them in the wintertime was icy cold, so they would send peasants who had committed a crime to do the miserable task. Over time, it worked its way into a threatening expression. There are many more idioms that other languages have that English does not, and that's all part of what makes language so fascinating.
The Bayou, or Pelican State of Louisiana, is featured first on today's World of Viewers segment. That's because Miss Fleming's class reached out to us from LeBlanc Middle School. The Raiders are in the city of Sulphur. Mr. Parati's or Parodi's class is next. It's great to be part of your day at Canton Intermediate School in the town of Canton in the Constitution State of Connecticut. And finally, it's the Mavericks of Malden High School. Miss Jordan's class is online in the city of Malden, South Carolina, the Palmetto State. If you farmed a gigantic gourd, whether you won or didn't win an award, what on earth else is the squash good for? Well, maybe the question is, what on water else is it good for? Because more than 300 people in Belgium recently hollowed out their Halloween harvests and set them afloat in an annual race that dates back 16 years. That's when local growers decided that 800-pound pumpkins were good for more than just soup. So they collaborated with a kayak club to stage a race or struggle across a local pond. They'll float, but they're not exactly built for speed. You can't exactly call those dinghy things banana boats or plow riders, and it might not take a yacht of seafaring skill to get them cutted out for service. But carving a pump canoe, a kayak-a-lantern, or a soup sloop takes more than a rafter thought. After all, they're still dugouts, so turning a ordinary squash into a pond-worthy stem boat certainly floats your boat. I'm Carl Azuz, thanking you for being the best part of what we do. This is the world from A to Z, and you mean the world to me.